Well, hello, guys. It is Bible Scribe back with you again, and I just wanted to say this is going to be a study session tonight. It's nothing I planned, but in speaking with another person that I do a little bit of research with, and we come to some interesting conclusions. We find some cool stuff. I just thought it would be cool to have this study session on chronology tonight, the chronology of both the first century all the way up forward through time, and just different things we found out about this. And so me and Katie are going to look at this stuff together. And so let me bring her up, and just wanted to say welcome to Katie for joining, and thank you so much for being here with me.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So yeah, Katie, we talk often, and you've been on the channel for a while, so I appreciate that. But we've become good friends, and this is just fun that we can study this stuff together. I think tonight what we're just going to do is talk through some of our material and look at some things with people. We've already got a few people in the chat. Looks like Chris G, Rick Bowser, and Deborah Miller are already there. Thank you guys for joining tonight. And so Katie and I are just going to talk through some things we found. And you're welcome in the comments while we're going to just give us comments, give us ideas. If study this stuff with us if you want at home, and if you find links, post them in the chat if you can. I'll try to make sure links go through if if I can make that happen. I know people have had problems with links in the past, but some of you have my email, so if you have to email me, then let me know in the chat and email me and I'll pick them up. But we're just going to talk a little bit about different things in chronology tonight, and go through a few different pieces of material. I don't know how long we'll go, but we'll take a little time here. So again, thanks, Katie, for joining. And it started today, Katie, with you sending me a link, right? And
Yeah.
this link, let me try to share this at least so the people can see it. Let's see, this YouTube video, and I gotta get a few things organized. Let's see, I'll try to share that too for you, Katie. So let's show that just so you're seeing what I'm seeing. So yeah, this video by a man named, and here's the guy, Gunnar Heinsohn. I may probably be saying that wrong because he's from Europe, but you sent that to me. Tell us a little bit about what's in this video, and why you sent it to me.
So I guess it's just this man's personal breakdown of chronology from like the first century, the first millennium, and he's theorizing that there is a lot of time that's been kind of inserted into the official timeline. So about 700 years of time that probably or maybe wasn't existent, that has been added because of people making assumptions, you know, kind of stuff like that. So it's involved. There's a lot of information here, but
Right.
it's very compelling, very interesting stuff here, I think. Uh, yeah, so I thought you'd get a kick out of it because it's just very interesting.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm trying to manage my windows, make sure we can see you and the stuff, and this is hard. But yeah, so I took a look at this video today, and I was kind of blown away by it. And so I just want to recommend this video to anyone in the chat. I'm trying to get this thing to move over here. Everybody can see you, Katie, but I'm having a problem with my screen share on my side. It's not what I want. Come on. Oh, I see. It's locked. That's my problem. Okay, now we go. Now everybody can see Gunnar a little better. But yeah, he goes through, and I was telling you just a little bit ago, we looked at some of these slides he has. They're just incredible. Like this one. So what he does really, for those on the live stream here, he says that the the Roman kingdom, the Roman Empire, the entire course of the empire from the first century to the 10th century, from the 100s to the 900s, seems like the history record we have of the events that occur, say at 300 and then 600 and then 900 AD, really seem like they're records of the same events, just repackaged for each time period. And then he gives all these interesting. Let me see if I can find one of his slides on the archaeology of this whole thing. For instance, here he's showing the difference between cities in these time periods, and he's making the argument that because archaeologically, these cities and these structures, buildings, they're hundreds of years apart, the span of an entire millennium, but yet they seem exactly the same. And they didn't progress over that time period. That's one of his major points, is the archaeology. And he actually, if I remember correctly, he references 33,000 different archaeological sites where they have looked for the three different strata of artifacts that they expect from these time periods, but they don't find them. They don't find, it's just one strata of Roman artifacts, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, to me,
it's a little weird like that. You wouldn't expect to see that. And then yeah, there's that, and then there's the pottery, the artifacts that also is kind of the same story. And
yep.
Yeah, yeah.
You see, like here, he's even going to other places like in Hungary, but the same area of the world, and saying, look, the architecture's the same between the 2nd century and the 9th century, 700 years apart. And his postulate is, if I remember everything right, it's that 700 years, in his opinion, were deleted, essentially. I mean, because of the way they overlapped everything, that it's 700 years different than it should be, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm just amazed by that. But the thing that's interesting, that I thought was also interesting about him, was I don't know that he's necessarily a Christian, although that might be the case, but he was saying things like he felt like, I think he has an interesting concept of the timelines in general, because he was saying, because of this shift in time, that he felt like people like Julius Caesar and some of the Caesars should have been pre-Christ, which I don't think that's right. I mean, what do you think about that?
Julius Caesar?
Yeah, he was saying that during part of the video. I think because he thinks the time frame was super compressed compared to what we have in our history books, that he was saying that puts the Caesars before Christ, which I think that's a wrong view, right?
Yeah, that's quite a leap. I don't know if I could say that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seemed wrong to me, just in general for his entire presentation. But otherwise, the information on the overlapping of these historical events and the architecture was just really incredible. Some of the best I've seen. There's the whole Tartaria group online too, and it's just not the same as what this guy does. This guy really has some good information here, evidence to show. So I just thought this was really, really amazing.
Yes, and he's using kind of like a common sense approach. So he's looking at the evidence presented, or he's just looking at the. Sorry, I got my nieces over if they're in the background and being loud.
That's okay. They sound like they're having fun. It's okay.
But yeah, so he's looking at just all these anomalies, right? And he's just trying to formulate a theory off of that, right? He's not necessarily forcing, I don't think, his own opinion on it.
Right. No, I think it's just a great video. So I thought we'd first just bring this forward, let everyone see this, because it, to me, is so. He even goes over these ship designs between the Viking ships of the 900s versus the Roman ships of the 3rd century, and they're exactly the same. I mean, just all these different things.
Square sail. Yeah, the square sail is a distinct feature.
Exactly. Here's the glass items you were talking about.
And he says, like, if you're asking the experts, why are we seeing such similar pottery and just artifacts from the 9th century compared to they seem to look just like artifacts from the 1st century. The official explanation for that is, well, they're heirlooms, right? They're passed down from father to son through these generations. And he's like, well, that's not impossible. That would be a plausible explanation, but there's no. He's saying there's no archaeology to back that up. There's no housing in these areas through these years to support that. There would have to be houses of residence, right? In
Right.
the same way for the fathers to pass down the heirlooms, right? They'd have to be living there, and they're not finding that. So that
Right.
combined with the fact that they seem to disappear right after the 7th century, they just seem to they're no longer being
Yeah.
handed down, apparently.
Exactly. That's what I remember him saying, that like you're saying it's like, yes, that could be plausible, except that they just vanished after the 7th century,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so the plausibility goes way down on that theory, but yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think of the other one that to me was a really good. Oh, he talked about the Crusades, which the first Crusade culminated in about 1090 AD, right? And he said the interesting thing about that was that they have no archaeological evidence of anyone living in Jerusalem that could have been conquered at that time. So he said, the Crusades was where the Roman Catholics came into the Holy Land, and they essentially massacred, according to history, massacred Jews and Turks, Jews and Muslims that were inhabiting Jerusalem. And he says there's really no archaeological evidence at all of those people being there or of any place they could have lived to support that many people at that time,
Right. Right.
which I thought was really interesting as well.
Really interesting. Like he's
Yeah.
making some very good points for this. This is not just this is not a really out there theory once you hear him kind of go into it. And I think he's bringing up things that they're kind of known to be problematic in the circles he runs in. you
Right.
know, it's just really.
He's definitely well studied. Like, this is not just your average Joe making a video. So I can't recommend it highly enough. It caught me off guard, and I was like, Katie, you struck gold again. What do you?
Well, no, I can't take credit for this one. This one was actually suggested to me by one of your viewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you would want me to name names, but
No. No. We won't name names, but he's a good guy. Apparently, smarter than we thought. No.
No, I found this to be like a treasure trove of information here. And then this guy, this Glenn Heinsohn has more information just like through his whole career.
Right.
There's a lot.
Yeah, I am interested to learn more about him. I don't know much right now except this video. So yeah, I did look on this channel, by the way, and it's channel, all in different languages. Yeah, it's all in French, I believe, and so it was hard for me, right?
I was hoping to find more. Nothing.
Thankfully, they had one in English, which is the one we were talking about. But yeah, I'll I guess what I need to do is get that in the chat for people so they can. Let's see if I can put this in the chat. Maybe it'll let me put a link in chat. Looks like that's going through. So now you guys have the link to this video if you want to see it.
All right.
Yeah, so that was the first thing I wanted to talk about. But I mean, in general, let's see. I'll stop sharing that with you, Katie, for a second. And so in general, chronology too, like you sent me some other things today that was interesting, and it
led me on a rabbit trail.
Well, you started looking. Tell us about what you were looking at today and kind of how it, what you were learning.
Well, I was trying to get more of a hold on just the official story. Mm-hmm. I learned a few months back now that there was a man by the name of Joseph Scaliger, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he's credited as being one of the major influences on our current chronology. So he was a big name at the time, and he was revising. He was calling it the new chronology. He was revising basically a lot of what was accepted formerly. So that just got me really intrigued. I was like, so what was the former chronology? And I get what I'm gathering is that people were largely biblically based. A lot of the scholars were more biblically based, and they were giving that the credence. They were going with the biblical record, like the prophets and the timelines given in the Bible, to kind of make a chronology, right? Which I would think that would actually be the best way to do it. But the new chronology started incorporating themes like the celestial bodies, like comets and eclipses and things that, because obviously the planetary orbits and everything, they're pretty consistent, right? So you can track time pretty well through that. So that was I'm not sure why that would be, because the Egyptians, they all always used that. So I'm not sure why that would be considered a new method. But they claim that they were incorporating this, it was a new idea in this new chronology. So they were starting to track eclipses and stuff on top of the biblical account, as well as I can't
So,
remember what the
so are you kind of saying that Scaliger used events known in history and tried to use the mathematics of the maybe of astronomy to then match those events and then move the timeline around to fit it, and then that's kind
yes,
of what he laid out as the new chronology,
yes.
as far as you understand, because I'm learning too about Scaliger.
This is all pretty much brand new to me too. I had heard about him, but I'm starting to do more of a deep dive. So yeah, that's the gist of it from what I can tell. And it
Okay.
wasn't just him. Like it wasn't just him. He was one of the forerunners, I guess. But after him, it was Petuvius. I think I'm probably butchering that, but it was like the person that studied under him. Um,
Okay.
which and he was a Jesuit too. Which Scaliger may have been a Jesuit. I'm not sure, but the person who followed after him, he was. And then there was, hang on, sorry, I got the article here. I'm just seeing if I
That's
can
good.
names. There's a lot of names because Flamenco I think is a big name, especially like in the Tartarian.
Right.
Groups.
Anatoly Fomenko. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've got him
yeah,
listed here.
yeah.
So,
He would, and he was taking a lot of liberty. Or he was saying it's 1,000 years missing from our timeline.
yeah.
So there's more conservative. There are more, conservative revisions.
And what's interesting too about Fomenko, if I understand it all correctly, I'm not sure if Fomenko would agree with the guy we just watched, and I'm McGunner.
No,
Um,
I don't think
I
so.
think he thinks that the changes in chronology happened later on, past the first millennia, perhaps, or maybe part of the Dark Ages. I think, if I remember correctly,
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
but
It's
not exactly the same thing. So it's interesting.
yeah. So that's the thing. That's another thing that surprised me was that this is not a new concept. This has actually been it's been going on for quite a while.
Yeah,
Because he would have been, let's see, Scaliger I think was in the 1600s.
yeah. He died in 1609. He was born in 1540. So I just want to also mention that that's smack dab in the middle of the Enlightenment
Yeah,
period,
yeah,
and we're gonna see that like a lot of these really questionable characters seem to appear in the Renaissance and the Enlightenment periods, and I just think that's really odd, and it's also when so much of what I believe was probably Christian thought was kind of pushed to the side,
yeah,
and instead it's like let's revive the Stoic philosophers, the philosophers of Greece and Rome. Let's revive all that,
yeah,
and of course that actually, not to get too far off the trail or the that we're on, but that all plays into what happened with our cosmology, with Copernicus and Galileo and all these guys. That was all part of this renaissance of thought that was like, let's change everything and revive the old school of thought that was before all this Christian nonsense, really, is
yeah,
what it was about.
yeah. That's what it was about. I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
That's what it feels like, at least, the more I
That's what
study
it
it.
feels like. Yeah,
Right.
got a sneaking suspicion. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I did note here in my studies that Scaliger was a Calvinist. I thought that
Yes.
was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not to besmudge any Calvinists, but I just, it's
This much.
interesting.
Yeah.
Besmudge. That's a word I haven't used yet today, so I'm glad I got that out. Let me see if there's anything interesting in here. Chronological system now used chiefly by astronomers based on the consecutive numbering of days since January 1st of 4713 BC. Of course, that's based on the Masoretic text of the scriptures. That's the work that I think it was Usher did to come up with about a 4,500 years prior to Christ for creation, which I don't believe in. I believe in the Septuagint model, which is 5,500 years since before Christ was creation. So
Okay.
that's interesting. But he did take that apparently and start from the 4700 BC. He says it's not to be confused with the Julian calendar. The Julian period was proposed by Scaliger in 1583 and named by him for his father, Julius Caesar Scaliger. Okay. So anyway,
Julius Caesar Scaliger. That's a little odd.
yeah, say that 3 times fast. Let's see. Here's some of the stuff that you sent today. I thought this was an interesting statement in this little snippet from sci-hi.org. And that was that it says Scaliger expanded the notion of classical history from Greek and ancient Roman history to include Persian, Babylonian, Jewish, and ancient Egyptian history. It's just an interesting statement.
Yeah.
He must have changed a lot about the understanding of chronology.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like.
It does.
Sounds like a whole lot. And it sounds like it was mostly derailing, like from the former school of thought, which was biblically based. Their chronology was biblically based for the most part. And then, you know, he would claim he is too, probably. But they're calling it the new and improved chronology. And I don't know. I just don't know if I know if it's better.
It says it even says he redefined chronology itself, which that's weird to me. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big statement. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big statement. As far as I know, too, before him, didn't Sir Isaac Newton do a chronology?
I think it was after him. I think it was after
Newton was after him.
That surprised me. Like, everybody was really interested in chronology all of a sudden and revising it. Really weird, but yeah. So I think after Scaliger's like protege, it was Theodor Mommsen, and then 2 Austrian astronomers, and then Morozov, and then Newton, I think, came after. But he tried his hand at that.
So just to make sure that I give people a chance to speak and chat, like we've got a few people chatting online. So the things you guys have said recently are, let's see. Thomas Rowland says, are you familiar with the melted brick buildings that we call mountains? And I mean, I would say I'm familiar with the idea of melted brick buildings, Thomas, but you know, I think to me some of that's hard to really vet and prove out. I mean, I do see mountains that look suspect in that way, but to know what really was the history of that structure or whatever it is difficult. But yeah, I'm you know, I will say this, and even back to the video that we were talking about, Katie, do you remember in that video he did talk about that there were he even showed photos, renderings, drawings, and etchings that people have made of Rome after the time periods he was talking about, and they were covered in mud, no less. He even talked about this dark mud, and he talked about that being a part of the time period. And so, you know, as much as I've kind of like laughed a little bit at some of the mud flood discussion out there, it seems that there could be some archaeological evidence to something like that, something that caused mud, at least in this sense. Maybe it was localized, maybe it was bigger than that, but I will just say that video today kind of opened my eyes to the possibility. Before, I really didn't consider that a true possibility, other than, I mean, I saw pictures of buildings that supposedly were buried, or, you know, it looked like there were windows built underground. But I will say that kind of made me question it again.
Yeah. No, I mean, I never dismissed the idea. There was clearly a lot of, you know, mud floods, whatever, you know.
There's a lot of things that look like it could be that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know what to make of it. I don't really know what to do with it. I don't deny that it's there, but I just don't know what to make of it. So I don't want to read into it and make something out of it that maybe it's not.
Right. Well, you're kind of like me. I think, you know, I follow the evidence, and if I see the evidence, then I'm like, well, that seems plausible. And the more I see, then I feel better about it. But so far, I just hadn't seen much much good
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Right.
but this is interesting to me. I will say, just so you guys on the stream are aware, this video has that in it too. So I would again recommend this video is really good. But um, okay, so then Deborah Miller said that the whole subject of stolen time playing into the millennial reign theory is so compelling.
Hmm.
It is.
I
It
have
is
to agree.
compelling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Chris Lucas says hi to everybody. Hi, Chris Lucas. And there's a bunch of people on now. Dr. Tony, it's good to see you. Laura Masood, it's good to have you on. You said this, Laura. Laura says, I think about an interesting point. In 1988, Russia celebrated 1,000 years of history. However, Apostle Andrew went there on his missionary journey. Very interesting. And Laura, I will say this, and Katie, you respond to this too, but I know that Russia is one of the places I have studied because their calendars were kept, they didn't go over to Gregorian until like in the last century or so, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't even know anything about that, so that's
Yeah,
strange.
so the Russians, I think they kept some of the a better record apparently than the rest of us in the world. So I'm not surprised to hear what you're saying there, that they celebrated 1,000 years of history in 1988. That's very interesting. But I do remember too in this video, Katie, do you remember what he said about Paul and Paul's followers in this video?
I don't.
Okay, I'm going to try to remember it. I hope I say it right. I think what he said is that there's evidence from writings about the Pauline followers. It's a group of people, I think, I can't remember what he called them, the Paulites or something like that. But this record comes from the either 8th or ninth century. But Paul was, of course, quote, dead for almost 1,000 years. So why would there be a group of Pauline followers so prevalent in that area of the world in the ninth century? And he has a good point. It goes along with everything else he says. That's like
Yeah.
another question. Wow, maybe that time of history was compressed in some way. But anyway,
Like if it was just one of these things that he was pulling out and trying to make a point out of it, it would be less compelling. But there's a lot, so it's at least worth looking at. I think it's at least worth um,
I agree, definitely.
entertaining the thought because
Well, I'm trying to just look down through. I'm looking through some of my stuff here to see if there's anything more that we can go into on him. I do have his writing, by the way, the De Imitazione. Oh wait, I don't think I have a copy. I think I know about it. I did take some information down, but I don't have a copy of it. And of course, it's in either Italian or Latin. But if I could get a copy I could read, I would definitely try to read it. So anyway,
so frustrating about a lot of these books is they're all in different languages.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, that it's honestly the truth. And when in some of my study on the Roman stuff I'm trying to learn now, that's also a problem. Some of it is in Latin, and I can pick out a word or two in Latin, but I can't read it. That would take me a while. Maybe I just need to force myself to learn it. But
Yeah.
yeah. So
um,
this is
there was another book that was really compelling that just made me think of that because it was in a different language and it hasn't been translated since. But I can't remember the man's name. If I think of it though, I'll mention it. But it was another one of those good ones. But it was kind of looking into the old Pythagorean cults and how they were all part of the same. Well, how Freemasonry kind of came out of that. That was kind of the root of it. Anyway, but it looked very good, but I can't get it. I wouldn't understand it. It's in Latin, I think. It's frustrating.
this is interesting here. I'm reading on my screen here about Scaliger a little more, and it says Scaliger's trials to compare various lunar and solar years by means of computation founded his increasing interest in the topic, especially as he did not come to satisfying solutions easily. On this way, he revealed that antique sources were sometimes not only incomplete and vague, but contradicted each other. So he used arithmetics, but had difficulties. Typical for a humanist chronologer of his time. As Scaliger had not studied Ptolemy, profound knowledge of astronomy and calendars was lacking. Instead, he first used standard textbook of Samotheus and later discovered systematic chronologies by Funk, who brought biblical events into order using astronomy in his Chronologia. So it's interesting how reliant he was on other people's work. And it's also reminding me of Copernicus in my study of Copernicus that I still haven't finished and want to, but it sounds like Copernicus, he lacked the skill to actually do the observations himself on the astronomy he was talking about. He used other people's observations. In fact, in none of his writings, in Copernicus's On the Revolutions of the Planets, or whatever it's called, he doesn't have any of his own computations. He has none of his own observations. It's all based on the observations of other people, because he didn't have the skills to do it. Which is just really odd, because it's the basis of our modern cosmology, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the same with Kepler. Kepler was
Right.
like a protege of Tycho Brahe, and then they had a falling out apparently, and then they got back together, and then Tycho Brahe mysteriously dies, and then Kepler inherits all of Brahe's work, and and he kind of changed what Brahe was saying. He anyway, which was a source, was the cause of the falling out to begin with, was this difference of opinion, and then Kepler just kind of was like, oh no, well, Brahe meant this, really, this is all his work, and this is what he really meant. It's just a little
Right.
sketchy.
Really? Come on. No. So yeah. So we got to wrangle ourselves back in. We're getting way off chronology now.
Well, all this stuff plays a part,
I
right?
know it does. It's connect. There's so many connections.
So much. Yeah.
I see a few new people and some comments coming in. So let me see about those real quick. Amanda Esquivel, welcome this evening, late evening for some people. You said, "Yay! I finally made it to one of the lives. I've been watching the replays of Sunday, but I work nights and usually sleep while you're doing the show." Oh, cool. Well, it's good to have you.
Yeah.
She says, "So my fam is in the living room right now watching Bruce Almighty with Jim Carrey. And at one point in the movie, when the God character gave Jim Carrey's character his power, Jim Carrey said, 'But God doesn't go on vacation.' And the God character said, 'Sure I do. Ever heard of the Dark Ages?' Makes a lot of sense when you remember their God is Lucifer." That's interesting, Amanda. You have to wonder now, after seeing these movies with new eyes that most of us have now seen these movies with, and like this, seeing that and wondering, like, do you think they randomly added that into the script of the movie? It's hard to think that, isn't it?
No, no, they're very intentional about everything they do.
I think you're right, Katie. I think you're right. The
It's hard to watch any of it.
all I can say about the Dark Ages is that it's just strange. It's just a strange time period. I don't even remember anything about the Dark Ages from school, except I think the plague. Wasn't the plague, the bubonic plague, in the Dark Ages?
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's the only thing I even remember about the Dark Ages, honestly. Um, and I guess I would have thought that the Catholic Church had some role during that time period, but in a bad way. So that's all I know, literally, about the Dark Ages. There's a lot I need to study, probably. But
Yeah.
it's interesting here, Katie, that Chris Lucas says he believes Tycho Brahe's model.
Well, his was geocentric, wasn't it? Tycho Brahe's. His was a more
I don't
geocentric
know.
model, because
Okay.
he was arguing against parallax. Brahe was arguing against parallax, and yeah, basically refuting that when it was gaining ground, and that was one of the primary reasons I think that they had well, it might have just been the whole model in general. They had falling out because of they had different spinnings in the model. So I'm not sure if that specifically was what caused it, but yeah, I think he was geocentrist.
Okay. I do have him recorded here. Let's see. He worked to combine what he saw the geometrical benefits of Copernican heliocentrism with the philosophical benefits of the Ptolemaic system. Whew, that's a mouthful. Devised the Tychonic system, his own version of the model of the universe with the sun orbiting Earth and the planets orbiting the sun. Interesting.
So basically geocentric.
It's geocentric, but that's interesting. He still had the planets orbiting the sun. That seems odd, but okay. Interesting. So I guess that's his view.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rabbit trail of cosmology is one that, man, and thanks to you, Katie, actually I've studied it more and more, and that's another one that is so daunting. It's so much information. I mean, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
How much have I read already? It's just ridiculous. But whatever.
Yeah. That's why I share things with you, because I'm like, there's just way too much, and there's too many threads, and I feel like I'm not even tying any of them together. They're just all kind of in my head, driving me crazy.
Well, it's good. It's good because I mean, maybe together, that's part of why we're doing this live stream tonight, guys, for you on the chat, is because I think that what I'm starting to learn is like my connection with Katie here has led me down some trails that I really wouldn't have thought about before, because she's studying things and going directions and finding things out that I probably wouldn't have found on my own. And I just think that the cooperation we can start to do, if we can do it, and that includes you guys in the chat or whatever, is like maybe that's part of why God's bringing us all together at this strange time in history. Is like
Maybe
we can add some of this together, some of this work together, and maybe come up with more than we could on our own. I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. So it's so far, Katie, our relationship, you've definitely spurred me on a few times and got me into some interesting stuff. So I think it's good. I think it's just really cool.
I do too. I'm extremely happy that you don't mind me sharing all this stuff with you, because I'm like, whenever I find something that I think is actually really valuable, I'll just send it to somebody just to have somebody else's thoughts on it, or at least to save it somewhere.
It's cool. It's cool. So I guess to continue on chronology a little bit, I feel at a loss because do you have other thoughts on the different ideas on the chronology out there? Because we talked about this video by, I'm going to say his name wrong again, Gunnar Heinsohn. But maybe we need to talk more about some of the other views of it. And I wish I knew more about them. Maybe that's part of what we need to look at now, is some of these other views.
That's what I'm trying to do, is look through all these different, just different views on it. Fomenko's, I really don't think I hold any more to Fomenko's position, just because it's pretty radical and it's pretty. Anyway, but yeah, but
yeah, and so here's his new chronology thing. I'm hoping I took some notes down here. Yeah, I did. He built his theories in comparing chronologies of events from different time periods. Let me pop this open a different way. Let's see. So it's a lot of links here. See, this is some of the stuff that I really need to get on my website so that, we can collaborate on some of these things, because, and by we, I mean everybody. So, anyone can go view it. But let's see. John Kurowski writes an article saying Anatoly Fomenko's new chronology says that all history is a fake.
See, that's the thing. It tends to. I'm not going to go that far. That's ridiculous. But
yeah,
there's something to it. Like there's something to it, but it's not that extreme. It's never one end of the extreme. It's always somewhere in the middle.
See, this is some of his postulates. The Roman Empire emerged in the late Middle Ages, not the 8th century BC. Okay, so okay. And in fact, ancient Rome, Greece, and Egypt as we know them didn't exist at all, and Jesus lived and died in the 12th century AD. This is part of my problem, and it was part of my problem with Gunner's stuff too, is that because they don't foundationally like anchor their time from Christ, it gets all wonky, and they can't figure out when anything is. It's like everything's overlapping everything, and maybe that's kind of what Fomenko came to, is like he went a little too far. Maybe I mean
He had no anchor.
I'm making a lot of assumptions here too by saying that, but
Mm-hmm.
I would I would love to have the time to just read all of his material too, but I'm reading like two or three other things right now, so that's hard. But um, he's been refining and publishing his ideas since the 1970s, claiming history is largely fabricated, that centuries upon centuries of history were faked by devious scribes or wildly misinterpreted by scholars. Yeah. The guiding principle of his theory is that recorded history before the 11th to 14th centuries is generally unreliable for various reasons. See, now that's totally different than what Gunnar Heinsohn's saying. Gunnar Heinsohn seems to be focusing on the first millennia after Christ, the
Yeah,
first century to the
it's a
ninth.
certain chunk of time that
Yeah,
he's concerning himself with. But Flamenco's kind of all over the place, it sounds like.
which I'm not totally convinced that there's not problems even beyond the first
Right,
millennium. Um,
right.
I could see there being problems in the
Multiple places.
14th, 15th, 16th century also, but I don't know what all those might be.
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, flamenco. But that's saying that is one thing. But I think flamenco's trying to do away with pretty much all of our understood history, except for like I guess bits and pieces here and there. But yeah, that's what
yeah,
I'm getting on board with.
I have a hard time with that statement that we just read, that all history before the 11th to 14th centuries is generally unreliable. That to me is a really wild statement. Like,
Yeah,
so you're
that's pretty.
saying everything before Christ and everything like,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
we have a lot of writings about those time periods, a lot of them. So it's really hard for me to believe that that's just,
yeah.
total nonsense. And it also makes me wonder, like, and I guess I need to read his material. Like, what does he anchor his time to? Like, how does he even reckon a time if he doesn't have an anchor at which he starts? Like, where does he start? I don't even know the answer to that question, but maybe he starts in the 11th to 14th centuries. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
interesting.
And something else that really struck me as really interesting, that article I sent you was, it seems to me that when they were uh, instituting this new chronology, right, these new methods for chronology, um, they were relying on, like you said, they brought in astronomy as one of their methods of of tracking the time. Um, they were relying heavily on that being consistent, right? Because obviously the stars are consistent. God gave them to us for signs and seasons, but they're not taking into account miracles. And when miracles would happen, it seemed that there would be a star or something out of place as a sign, right?
Right.
That was why it was a sign, because it was out of place. So that was something that this article I think went into, is that you know um, just they weren't considering that. That wasn't being taken into consideration. The fact that there could have been miracles that would cause certain celestial phenomena to be out of place, and that that would mess up your chronology like crazy if you're expecting it to be consistent.
Right. That makes sense to me. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I have, for instance, a star map application on my computer, or at least I used to, where you can spin back time like thousands of years and then look at the time of Christ and like what was in the sky, supposedly. I don't know that I trust it, right? Because
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you're saying, maybe it wasn't always the exact same, like clockwork like that. I mean,
yeah,
and who knows, based on miracles like when the sun stood still in Joshua's
yeah.
time or whatever, who knows how that all could have affected it. And I really don't know that it's a valid way of trying to ascertain history or chronology.
That's where
But
I'm at. That's where it's like, yeah, you can't
yeah,
rely on that.
yeah.
Um, so that was just another added thing. So I guess Immanuel Velikovsky had his own revised chronology as well. And I think it was written about in a few of his books, but it was Ages of Chaos, I think, was one of them that was written that he, had talked about it.
Velikovsky. I don't think I have anything on him right now.
He's he's really interesting. My dad had a lot of books from him, and that was where actually my dad had first heard about the kind of the phantom time hypothesis was from Velikovsky, because they were all kind of, this was like a thing apparently. It was just like, it wasn't just Scaliger. How
Can
do
you
you
still
pronounce
see my screen, Katie?
it? I see Joseph Justice Scaliger. That's what I'm seeing on the screen right now.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to. Oh, here we go. Now you see
Oh, there we go. Worlds
Emmanuel
in Collision.
Velikovsky.
Yes, Worlds in Collision. There was Worlds
Right.
in Collision and Ages of Chaos. I haven't read either of them. I haven't read any of Velikovsky's work, but
Why
that
not?
was. Well, now I'm gonna have to.
The pressure's on.
Well, that's then. That was out. I was actually watching a video today on a man really putting Velikovsky's chronology to the test, and Velikovsky's was heavily relying on biblical events, and like the pharaohs reigning and stuff, and that was kind of what he was going with and trying to identify certain pharaohs, and he was thinking, I believe he thought we were 700 years off or something like that. Maybe just, I can't remember. Anyway, that's why I want to read it, because I want to just get a better hold on this. Because
Do you know when this was published? I'm not seeing a published date on it. Maybe I had that and I just destroyed it.
well, hang on, I might actually have the book.
It's pretty new though. And this is modern stuff, right?
Velikovsky?
Yeah.
Not really.
No?
I mean 1900s, I think.
Okay.
Ages of Chaos. Hang on, yeah. Volume 1.
Well, if nothing more, we're giving people food for thought, things they can look up and learn about. But
Yeah. Oh, this is 1952.
1952. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, contemporary, I guess we would say.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
Let me double check a little bit of the chat here. We're getting behind now because people are, getting interested. So let's see here. Amanda says she loves this idea of researching together. Yeah,
I know. It's awesome.
I do too. I do too. And Amanda, just know that I'm thinking more and more about that all the time. And I don't know if it's something I don't know. I can build that stuff into my website where we could like share stuff together. And I don't know. I'm working on that. I'm just telling you, I'm working on that, thinking about it more and more because I agree. It's good to share ideas.
Yes.
Laura Massoud asked a little bit ago, she asked, when did Islam come onto the scene? Because it had a big impact on the Christian world in the Middle East and in Spain. Yeah, no kidding, it did. Massive impact. I have this, oh my goodness, I gotta find this real quick. Let me share my thing again here. And I gotta find this. Muslim. There's an incredible video about this topic of Muslim conquests or Muslim attacks against Europe. There's a time-lapse video is what I'm looking for. Time-lapse Muslim attacks in Europe. It's one of the most incredible videos. And of course, it's going to be hard to find. Yeah, they're probably not going to promote that one, I'm sure. Well, okay, I'll just paint the picture. If I can find the stinking, oh, here it is. I just didn't look down in my notes here. This video.
And here it starts. Islam burst out of the.
Can y'all hear that? Can everybody hear that?
Attacking the Middle East. And notice that it doesn't take long until they're crossing the Mediterranean and attacking southern France and Spain.
So this video, I won't play it through. It's just 3 minutes and 43 seconds. Here's the link to this video, by the way. Let me post that so everybody has it. And this is just in regard to Islam, but this starts, as you can see, about 700 AD. Let's see if it goes further back. 640 AD. And it shows through time, it plays through to about 1800 AD. These dots, as it goes through time, it shows you the attacks that Muslims took out on European countries. So you watch over time, and you can see as they come on, they turn white when the attack occurs in history, and then they turn red for past attacks, so it just builds up over time. And it's just an amazing thing to see how oppressed Europe was by the Muslim jihadists. I mean, they were getting attacked constantly throughout history by the Muslims. And, it's funny to me, I think that there was someone that tried to paint me in a corner and say, well, Christians are the evil ones. We've attacked so many peoples over the centuries, but nothing like this. I mean, if the Christians have done that during, say, the Crusades, that's the example people always give. A few battles in the Crusades, there was, I can't remember the number, if he numbers it here, but you can see on this map, there were literally hundreds and hundreds of attacks by Muslims over the centuries in Europe. So it's just a really interesting thing to see. And but I gave you guys that link if you're interested. I just think that's a real interesting topic. And so, Laura, you brought that up, but when did Islam come on the scene? That's a really good question. Because if this chronology is messed up, when was it supposedly?
Yeah.
Katie, do you remember when Muhammad came on the scene? I'm trying to think.
No, I know very little about this topic.
It says Muhammad was born in 570 AD, which would have been right in the middle of this chronology rut or shift that we're talking about, possibly. So it's just interesting. And what's also interesting to me is that right after the Dark Ages, right in 1090 is when the First Crusade happened, and the Christians went to war against them. It's just really weird the way things kind of plop out in history, in our traditional history, whatever. Yeah. To me, it's just it's ironic almost. I don't know.
Isn't that what you were looking into with the Gog and Magog stuff?
Yeah. My Gog and Magog video, that First Crusade, because it was 1,000 years from Christ, I was questioning whether it had something to do with Satan being released. And of course, that's the time when the Muslims and the Jews, the Muslim Turks specifically took over Israel and Jerusalem. And then the crusade happened to get them out, and it's just interesting that all that matches up. But if the timelines are all wonky, then maybe it doesn't quite match like I think. It's just really hard.
Yeah.
And Laura says that scholars have new research about Muhammad and Quran. The man and the locations don't match with the places they describe, unlike the Bible. The geography in the Bible is right, however. Interesting. Laura's another one we could get on here for some roundtable discussions. She's got some information. That's good. Thank you, Laura, for that. Just to check through some of the other chat here. Rick, thank you for helping Amanda with the video link we were talking about earlier. Appreciate that. Deborah Miller says Fomenko may have been doing some good LSD in the 60s. I'm just saying.
Exactly. Like painting his artwork.
Yeah. Some LSD, some drugs. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I don't give much weight to his
And that's depressing to me because when I first came on the scene starting to learn some of the stuff, everyone was like, Fomenko, Fomenko, Fomenko. And I'm like, really? Okay. And then I looked into it and it's like, I don't even know if I understand what he's trying to say. But again, I haven't read his book. So, um,
Yeah.
anyway, what else have we got in the chat here? Let's see. Amanda says, I'm not sure if it's been mentioned yet, but the book titled A Guide to the Phantom AG by Emmett Scott does a good job exploring this subject. Okay.
I'm going to note that. That sounds good.
I'm going to check and see if I can find information about that online real quick. Oh, AG. She just left off the E. It's A Guide to the Phantom Age by Emmett Scott. And I think I found it on Amazon. And I'm wondering, let's see. It was published in 2014, so I probably can't find a bootleg copy of it. Oh, did I say that on the live stream? Dang it. Just out of curiosity, I always go to archive.org and I search for some books because sometimes you just find them sitting out there. And yeah, this one's too new, so it's probably not here. Yeah. But that's interesting. Yeah, thank you, Amanda, for mentioning that. I might see if I can find out some more information about it or get a paperback. Sometimes I can get a paperback pretty cheap, used paperbacks. Cool. Thank you for that. Amanda apologizes for misspelling because she says the cat got on the keyboard. That's great.
That's awesome.
Oh, goodness. Let's see. Anything else? Chris Lucas, you said, I think they have a real solid reason for chronology having issues. And that's in reference to a video you mentioned called Seraphim Hamilton Rethinking Ancient Chronology. Let me look that up real quick, Chris Lucas. I'm just curious. Let's go over here, there, and Seraphim Hamilton. That's such a weird name. That's a person?
It is.
Man. It's a weird name. The Bright Serpent. That's what your name means. How does that feel? My name is the Bright Serpent.
Oh boy.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Let's see here. There it is. Rethinking Ancient Chronology. It looks like you may have a series of these.
Hello, everyone.
I'm assuming this is the guy. I feel like I've seen something by this guy before, but that being said, let's see here. Chronology. Looks like that's the guy. I'm not sure if it's that video up at the top that you mean. Why the Bible requires a revised chronology or rethinking ancient chronology, the decline of Egypt. So I'll throw that in the chat for you guys if you need it, just for your reference. I'm going to throw it in my database too, so I have it to look back to. Yeah. Oh, I've got too much stuff here. I'll never look at all this. All right. Well, at least I saved it for next time. All right. Well, as far as chronology now, I guess let's move past chronology because I think I'm at the limits of my knowledge. I don't know about you, Katie.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to share right now. I'm just going to have to keep...
Yeah. So let's talk just briefly about, because the reason chronology is important, it affects so many things. I mean, I think that, most of the internet right now is all obsessed with, does the chronology actually support a millennial reign on Earth? And, it's interesting, like what Gunnar Heinsohn is saying does not support that theory. Like it essentially crushes the first millennium into a smaller time frame, thereby removing the possibility that there was a millennium on Earth, because then it would bleed over into time periods we know a lot about, right? Very modern time periods.
There'd be no way we wouldn't know that. Yeah.
Right. That just doesn't seem to work with that theory.
That's true. That hadn't occurred to me. That's true.
But to me, it does help. It does, because if you, if either you, Katie, or anyone on the chat remembers my video on Phantom Time, when I got finished with it, I came away feeling like I felt like there was about 500 years messed up, like that shouldn't have been in our timeline. Mm-hmm. And so we were really at more of like a 1500 time period than a 2020 something time period.
That still
kind of jives with what Gunnar's saying in a way. I mean, he kind of says it, I think it's 700 years, but that whole time frame kind of still jives with that thought. And so I guess I still have that feeling that maybe I was on the right track there, but still have a lot to learn, obviously. But I guess I'm just curious, like, Katie, what are your thoughts on the millennial reign and how that played out? I mean, is it the same as kind of what you think I believe about that, or is it different?
I think you and I are kind of on the same page as far as that goes. The millennial reign, I honestly haven't researched this too deeply. I kind of have my think so's on it now, but I haven't done a lot of study on it. So right now, I believe that the millennial reign was probably spiritual or heavenly. It wasn't on Earth.
Right.
And it sounds like after the close of the millennial reign, Satan's released for a short season. Now, I don't know. That sounds to me like a short season would be in relation to the millennial reign. So, definitely shorter than 1,000 years, but
yeah,
it's pretty, it's hard to know for sure how long that would have been, but
sure.
And then I don't know if that's ongoing, honestly. Like, is that happening now? Is Satan released and the deceiving of the nations is ongoing, like currently? And the surrounding the camp of the saints, is that like a spiritual camp of the saints being surrounded? I don't know. That's basically kind of where I'm at. Or it's just like, I don't know. That's real up in the air for me. Right now I'm just working on studying the Bible is really what I got to do, because that's going to be the anchor for all of it. And I feel like the more you dive into the extra biblical stuff, just men's thoughts and scholars and really respected people, they don't really have a clue either. My takeaway is kind of like all this stuff, just all the article I sent you today and Gunnar Heinsohn, all this stuff. My takeaway is that apparently nobody really knows. And it's just like, it's kind of all up for debate at this point. So for me, it's like, I'm just going to study the Bible, man, because that's what I got to trust has the answer.
I like that sentiment. I definitely do. And I think you and I probably would agree. I mean, I agree with everything you said pretty much on where we probably are and what's probably already occurred. But it is interesting to think about some of this stuff. I will say that it would be great to know if there was some kind of history that jived with the millennial reign.
For sure.
Like people get, I think, a little off the rails into all the some of the Tartaria stuff, which, like I've said, I read, if you just read the book I read, which was not Don Quixote, the adventures, the writings of Marco Polo.
Yeah.
He says the Tartarians were like, I mean, they were honorable but vicious warriors, and they weren't Christian, except that the leader, the Khan of Tartar, knew of Christianity and thought it was a very good religion, and he wanted it for his country too, for his rule. And that was what Marco Polo was tasked with, is going back to the Pope and getting people to come teach the Tartars about Christianity, because the I think it even said in there that the Khan was worried. He said, I can't just convert, because if I did, I would lose all my magicians and sorcerers and all of my armies, and I would have problems. And so he's like, I need you to come and teach the people, not just, I can't just change everything, because then I will, it'd be bad politically. So he was obviously a very smart, shrewd ruler, but there was nothing super or magically Christian about that nation. It was
Doesn't
just
sound like, if
a
that's
very large, spread out nation over all of Siberia and most of Russia. And for a time, it sounds like they really had a lot of rule. And I guess Marco Polo that was the 1400s, right? So yeah. So I mean, that's what I know from the writings. But then people get online saying all sorts of things about Tartaria, and I just don't.
And a lot of it is what ifs. I think a lot of
It's
it
a
is
lot
just,
of what ifs. Yeah.
it's a lot of what ifs, and I'm like, I don't want to do what ifs.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine to go there, I guess, but it's like, I don't know.
Well, it's fine to go there, but what I see online is more of like an obsession, kind of.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
like,
sure.
I mean, I've got lots of pictures that look like mud floods too, and I've got lots of pictures of different cities that look interesting and buildings
Like
that are amazing.
Yeah.
Got some empty streets.
Yeah.
But the connective tissue of those things isn't there yet, so it's really hard to make really good explanations of those things.
That's where I'm at with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun to think about, but.
Well, let me check a little bit more on the chat here, guys. Amanda's going to town. She gets the prize for the comments. But let me just see what you're saying here. You say, Amanda, you're super interested in where we are in the little season. I think we're in the little season. The next event is Satan gathering the armies of the earth to cross the broad plain of the earth and attack the camp of the saints, which is what Katie was mentioning. I think the broad plain of the earth may be Siberia. The camp of the saints is possibly the magnetic North Pole, which is moving towards Siberia. Would explain Project Bluebeam and the anti-Russian propaganda.
Project Bluebeam.
Yeah, now we're getting there. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Amanda. I definitely believe that we're in the little season right now, and I think we're actually very close to the end of it. And it's hard to know some of those things about the gathering of the armies. I suppose you're referring to Revelation 20 when it talks about the gathering of the armies around the camp of the saints, and then you mentioned the camp of the saints there. So that would be what they call, is that the Battle of Gog and Magog? That's the Battle of Gog and Magog, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just really hard to know, and I've said it before, I'm about 70% sure that that's going to happen in the future, but then 30% sure it may have already happened. So it's hard to know. It's really kind of hard to know.
Yeah.
But either way, there's probably a lot of things in the future for us as far as what's going on in it. I don't know. Katie, were you on the live stream Sunday?
I was not. No.
You missed that. I thought you missed it. That's fine, by the way. Don't ever care. It's not like I'm taking attendance. But I notice when I miss people that I don't see people. So but in that, I mentioned a prophecy out of the book of 2nd Baruch, which I think is very interesting. And Rick Bowser really commented on it. He was like, that was awesome. But that prophecy was about our time, which you don't see much of in the Bible. But in Baruch, in this 2nd Baruch, I think it was around chapter 60, 69, something like that. There's this prophecy called the prophecy of the clouds and the waters. And you can see exactly in that prophecy at what stage the fall of Jerusalem occurs, and what it calls the tribulation or the trial of the Jews. Mm-hmm. And it's very specific. So that's that time period. And then it goes further and it keeps going. Mm-hmm. And it talks about this time at the end that we're essentially what we're in. It was very interesting to me. I would recommend it to anyone that's listening to take a listen to that or read that.
Yeah. Which chapters is it?
Let me make sure of that, and I'll tell you in just a second here.
Okay.
I put it on my live stream. the description for my last live stream. So let's see here. I'll just search for myself on YouTube and see if I. So, oh, there I am, and we're live. Scary.
That's scary.
But yeah, on Sunday's live stream on the chat, I've got Second Baruch 68 through 76 is where it was.
All right.
So I would just recommend anyone that didn't catch that live stream to take a listen to that, or listen. Well, you can listen to me talk about it. I do go through it on that live stream, and there's a jump link to it. But also, just reading it, I think, is good. It gives you time to soak it in a little more. But yeah, that was really good. And here's the link to this live stream, and straight to the part about Baruch. Should take people straight there if they want to go see that afterwards or sometime. So anyway, I just think it's interesting, and that kind of confirmed to me that, wow, there is some things happening and some things that are going to happen. And I'm not so concerned with exactly like what exactly is it and when is it. I'm not crazy about that kind of thought pattern. And like, I had that obsessiveness back when I was a Protestant dispensationalist, right? And I don't need any more of the fear tactics or the anticipation of any moment he's going to snatch me up out of my chair kind of thing. And so I just don't think that way anymore. But I do know there's some things that are happening and some things that are coming. And I feel very confident about that at this point, because I now have studied a lot of things that have shown it to me, including what I just posted. So again,
awesome.
Yeah, encourage anyone to check that out. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think we may be coming to a close. We've been about an hour and 20 minutes or so, and I think it's been a lot of fun.
It's been a lot of fun, yes.
And thank you, Katie, for joining me. This has been a blast. We'll do it again. We'll do it some more sometime soon.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds awesome.
And before we finish, I just want to see if there's anything else you guys are chatting about that we can just briefly chat about. Yeah, Rick Bowser, you said to Amanda, don't worry about posting too much. Yeah, Amanda, I wasn't trying to tell you to stop. I was just laughing. I was just making fun. I do that. Laura Masood, you say the whole world being deceived is a kind of sign of the times. I believe that's true. And in fact, that's part of what that second Baruch passage talks about, is the deception going on even right now. That's why it was so powerful to me. It's like, wow, this is really talking about what's happening right now. It even mentions some of the things we're experiencing in our world, like earthquakes, fires, floods, and famines. If I'm saying that exactly correct, I know it's some of those things, but it's specifically things that are going on almost daily in our world right now. So that was interesting too. Let's see what else you guys have here. You said, Laura, too, that you felt our genetics are being ruined also, and that's a sign, like the days of Noah. Perhaps it is. I mean, the things they're doing genetically are scary for sure, and don't give me warm fuzzies at night. I mean, it seems like things that God should not allow to happen. That's part of what hurts me so bad thinking about some of this stuff, is how can God allow it to happen, right? That to me is a question that I may have to ask him someday when I'm there in front of him, but sometimes it's hard for us to understand why. It's hard.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that the as in the days of Noah verse, wasn't that in context of like kind of carelessness? Wasn't the Lord kind of referencing that like as not being prepared as they were in the days of Noah? They didn't see it coming on them.
Yes, I do think that's true. And that verse specifically seemed to be about the first century, what they were experiencing then. And essentially in the context, like you said, it sounds like it's saying, just like they weren't prepared when it happened in the days of Noah, they're not going to be prepared now in the first century for what's going to happen in that time period. So I do think that's the context of that verse. However, I think the genetic experimentation, so to speak, of what they're doing, our scientists are doing nowadays, is just as heinous and horrible as what was happening before the flood, right? Um, some of the things they're proposing doing are just, they're hideous to me.
Yeah.
And just the simple fact that they use human fetuses to power most of that research. I mean, it's heinous.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Oh yeah, it's evil. Yeah.
But yeah,
Fun stuff.
I don't want to talk about that now. I don't want to talk about that anymore.
Oh boy.
Okay. Free Sky, by the way, I see you on there, and I welcome you to the channel. I don't think I've seen you before, but welcome. And you say you're from Australia. Awesome. I'm glad you could join tonight. It's been fun. Or it's not night for you, I don't think, but but thank you for joining. Chris Lucas, you mentioned you are historicist, and you've got different ideals, and then probably anyone here. You think the papacy is the second beast of Revelation, and the Pope is the image of the beast. Okay, I know about the historicist view, and so I understand what you're talking about. I do, but yeah, I probably have a different view than most of us, but that's perfectly fine. I'm glad you're here, bud. And I have seen you in other live streams, so I just appreciate you participating with us. It's awesome. Then Amanda says some more stuff. This is awesome. I agree. It has been fun.
This is so fun.
Stacia, I didn't see you on there, but I'm glad you joined.
Hi, Stacia.
Stacia's here. Awesome. And Laura. And Rick Bowser. Thank you guys. I think what we'll do is just probably finish up for tonight, and definitely, this has been a blast, so we'll probably do more of it, but it'll, be when we have other topics we want to just knock down, or other things we want to talk about. And any of you on the chat are welcome to suggest anything you want to just dive into or take some time for, like this, in a very casual fashion. And I'd be happy to have anybody on. But Katie, this has been especially fun. This is the first time I've done this, so awesome. Yeah. I appreciate you so much. And Armored Raven, you're lurking. I see you now. Nice. Thank you. And Karen Morgan, it's good to see you too. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. And thank you, Katie, to you. And you all have a great night. God bless you all. Thank you for joining just for this little study session. It's been a blast. So take care, everybody. Good night.